There's a few points that I have been trying to articulate about the seven for so many years. And it can be encapsulated in this idea. The seven and their power is hidden within the pages of the book. It's never going to be obvious what the seven can actually do because, in a sense, we are reading a book about the seven. Let's look at Dunk and Egg. There is a time in each Dunk and Egg book where Dunk is channeling one of the seven. He is channeling a god. The most obvious example I can find, and I've only ever listened to these books, so I don't know what page it is. I don't even own the books, but I'm pretty sure there's this part in the second book, the second Dunk and Egg book, the Sworn Sword, where Dunk is speaking to all these nobles, and there's this line about how he says it was as if a god was speaking through him. And he was almost surprised by the things that were coming out of his mouth. And the things that were coming out of his mouth were so bold that the nobles, were taken aback that some rando hedge knight was speaking this way to them. But the things that he was saying, again, were so bold that they had to listen. Dunk often finds himself in situations in which the gods desire to live through him. I truly believe this is the philosophy, or if you want to call it, a magic system that George R. R. Martin is using. The reason this hits and connects so well is that if you believe in some kind of spiritual realm or gods of some sort, it feels realistic in a way. This is how maybe humans could have conceived of gods in ancient times. The idea that that there are times in your life where you feel a rush of power and it's as if something is pouring out of you. It's a surreal feeling. It's not something that can really be pinned down or explained. This is the power of the seven. The power of the seven is never going to be like the power of the red god or the drowned god. The power of the seven is not obvious. It is subtle. Here's another random example. This is at the end of A Dance with Dragons in the Dorne storyline. We have followed the sand snakes throughout the book, and they are finally being released by the Prince of Dorne and sent out onto political tasks. There's one sand snake, don't ask me her name, but she's like the haughty kind of bad girl. She has knives up her sleeve or something, but she's not like Obara, who's like in your face a warrior. And there's another one who's like blonde and kind of like, she's not a silent sister, but I don't know. She's like in the church. But anyway, the one that I'm talking about is the one that gets sent to King's Landing to be on the King's Council. And she walks up into that King's Council, or maybe we're not with her, but when this chapter is happening, we are coming to understand that there are 6 people on the King's Council. It's Tommen's council. Cersei has been deposed, and now all these men have come to fill this power vacuum. There are 6 representatives, And this sand snake comes into the midst of these men who are all men of like the northern kingdoms north of Dorne. She comes amongst them as a stranger. Nobody really knows who she is. She's from Dorne, which automatically kind of makes her other compared to the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. And the way that this writing is set up is so obvious. She is literally described as a stranger, I believe. This is the power of the seven. The seven make themselves known within the human corporeal bodies. They make themselves known in the story. They love to channel themselves through humans. And I don't even like talking about it that way, as if these beings are somehow conscious. It's more like the idea of the seven makes itself come true in the stories that humans play out themselves. This is what I was talking about in my old Power of the Seven video. You will find all seven gods in so many scenes in the Song of Ice and Fire books, but it will never be obvious. It will always be them as subtle archetypes. But when you see the subtlety of it, that is when you have to pay attention, because that is when we are witnessing God play itself out, especially in the minds of the Westerosi. The stranger is so important to this critical mixture because the stranger is the representation of otherness that people in Westeros so often want to reject. And yet it can never be rejected because the stranger is always present within the seven. You will always see the most true unity when the presence of the stranger is there among six other characters. And in a sense, anyone can fulfill the role of the stranger, just like anyone can fulfill the role of any of the other gods. That is what is meant by that like Zoroastrian philosophy of like 7 in 1. You can think of the Holy Trinity, 3 in 1. 3 ideas make up one thing. That is the power of the seven. There's another part in the third Dunk and Egg book, The Mystery Knight. This is at the climax of the story, and Dunk enters a chapel of the seven, or a sept. And it's so fun to me whenever characters enter a sept, and the first thing that is remarked upon is how many candles are lit at each altar. In this scene, Dunk sees that the altar which has the most candles is the altar of the warrior. And in this scene, Dunk enters into combat with another knight, and you can literally, in the text between the lines, see the god coming into Dunk, channeling itself, the idea channeling itself through Dunk to make itself realized and known upon the earth. If you want to get a little woo-woo about it, I am someone who I kind of practice an atheistic spirituality, atheistic magic. For me, it's more about the rush of ideas and power, how they affect you physically in the moment. That to me is magic. But if you want to think about gods as something separate from yourself, the gods want to be human. They don't want to be disembodied ideas. The gods are obsessed with humans because they want to be us. They want to be alive. The thing that makes life sweet is the fear of death. And the gods want to feel that because they are disembodied and have no sensory input. And so they find human vessels to live out their story through. And this is what Dunk often is, in some sense. Like, that is one reading of Dunk and Egg. And that is one reading of, honestly, all the characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, especially when the seven are in play. I think there's another part in Dunk and Egg, in the first book, where that same trope is used. Dunk realizes he's speaking and doing things that surprise himself, but it's at the moment where the most power rushes through him, because he has opened himself up to be a vessel of morality. I mean, Dunk has his own ideas of morality, and he chooses to live them out. He's never forced to do this by the gods, but the gods are attracted to him because he has this, like, moral code. He's an easy person to tell a story through. There's so much to say about the seven, and I really feel that the thing that is so compelling about A Song of Ice and Fire is because sometimes the magic feels so real that it's like, I've experienced the things that these characters are experiencing. I've experienced power like that. I've experienced that rush of when the idea flows through you and you live out the drama of the story of the gods. That is the essence of the power of the seven in A Song of Ice and Fire.